Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group. You've tuned in to Hot Topic Bold Talk, the podcast where we dive into everything that matters today. Join me as we explore the hottest trends and pressing issues with conversations that sizzle and perspectives that heat up. This is Hot Topic Bold Talk, since every chat has something cooking. Let's dive in to today's discussion. Hello, my name is Dr. Jacqueline, and I'm with DTP Leadership Group, and this is podcast 96. You will notice that my voice has changed, and I'm not feeling very well this evening, but I do want to give you the message I had written for you for this week. Yes, I'm in the midst of trying to recover from COVID. So I hope y'all will be patient with me this evening. And also, if you want to hear more detail about this particular podcast, of course, you can always read my document that I provide in a blog. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about hope versus despair. Kamala Harris's pledge for a better America. I want to go over her promises because I think they were gone over real quickly, and I want to be sure that we know all of them and understand them so we can truly talk about them. First, I want to talk about is the economic reforms and the consumer protection. Let me say that at least we know when Kamala Harris speaks, her actions are going to match her words. Would like to start talking about the promises that VP Kamala Harris has made to the American people in her speeches and comments. CNN has published promises Kamala Harris has made so far. It's an excellent article, and it describes many things, and she states very clearly in it, like Biden, she intends to contrast her vision for America with that of the former President Donald Trump. VP Kamala Harris says, in the moment, I believe we face a choice between two different visions for our nation, one focused on the future and the other focused on the past. Then she goes into economy. She says higher prices, and this is in the article written that I mentioned, higher prices are a top concern for many Americans who are struggling to afford the cost of living after a spell of steep inflation. Many voters give Biden poor marks for handling the economy. And then I want to mention, as a part of Harris's economic agenda, here's what she says. Harris wants to counter the increase in food costs, which she argues stems in part from some big grocery chains that are keeping prices high, even though their production costs have leveled off. She's calling for the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. She would also secure new authority for the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys generals to investigate and penalize companies that unfairly exploit consumers in the quest for excessive profits on goods and the second thing she talks about is tax relief for middle and lower income families. Harris has proposed using tax credits to provide relief to middle class and lower income Americans. Her plan revives or extends temporary measures that Biden and congressional Democrats enacted in major packages when the party controlled the Congress. So you want to think about that. Not only do you want to elect Harris, but you want to elect down below those that are going to support this kind of thing. Harris's proposal would restore the American Rescue Plans popular expansion of the child tax credit to as much as $3,600, up from $2,000, and call for it to be made permanent. The enhancement was only in effect for 2021, as the Republicans got in control of the House. Her plan would restore the American Rescue Plan's enhancement of the Earned Income Tax Credit, known as the EITC, which increases the maximum credit for workers without dependent children to roughly $1,500. The previous boost was only in 2021. The third area she's going to work on is, of course, housing. And she's rolled out a plan that's three-section plan that aims at addressing the nation's housing shortage. Parts of it build on a proposal that Biden has already unveiled. But the vice president's plan promises to provide up to $25,000 in down payment support for the first home buyer. The down payment support would apply to working families who paid rent on time for 2 years, with more generous support for the first-time home buyers. The plan would allow for more than 1 million first-time home buyers per year, including first-generation home buyers, to access the funds, according to her campaign. Harris is also calling for the building of 3 million new housing units. To spur construction, she would provide a first-ever tax incentive for builders who build starter homes sold to first-time buyers. She also would expand an existing tax incentive for the building of affordable rental. Number 4 is healthcare access and affordability. To compare this to Trump, you're going to see that almost everything he wants to destroy. Harris would like to have a healthcare platform that builds on Biden's administration efforts to reduce prescription drug costs. She's calling to expand the current $35 monthly cap on out-of-pocket costs for insulin and the upcoming $2,000 annual limit on out-of-pockets for prescription drugs generally to all Americans, not just Medicare enrollees. These caps were put in place for those on Medicare in the Inflation Reduction Act. The $2,000 limit on Medicare Plan D drug costs takes effect in January. The 3 major insulin manufacturers in the U.S. offer price caps or saving programs that lower the cost of insulin to $35 for many patients, a move Biden pushed for in his State of the Union address last year. Harris's plan would also accelerate the speed of the Medicare drug price negotiations so that the cost of more medication comes down faster. The Biden administration just announced the results of the first ever round of negotiations, which is expected to result in $6 billion in savings for Medicare and $1.5 billion reduction in out-of-pocket costs for seniors when the lower price takes effect in 2026. I ask you to be patient when you see it. 5, tackling consumer and medical debt. Many of my friends I have had heavy debt loads, which weigh down people's finances, and they hurt their ability to buy a home or get a loan, car loan, or they're a small business and they need some help. In Harris's plan, she pledged to work with states to cancel medical debt for millions of Americans and help them avoid falling behind on healthcare bills in the future. States and municipalities have used the American Rescue Plan funds to cancel $7 billion of the medical debt for up to 3 million Americans, according to the campaign. Harris has been a leader in the White House's efforts to ban medical debt from credit reports, noting that those with medical debt are no less likely to repay a loan than those who don't have unpaid medical bills. Harris' administration could keep this momentum going and could deal with some litigation. She's a great lawyer. Litigation which could impact Trump's controlled Supreme Court, which ruled against President Biden being able to provide more student debt reductions. And then in 6 is reproductive rights and women's health. Harris took on the lead role of championing abortion rights for the administration after Roe versus Wade was overturned in June of 2022. This past January, she started a reproductive freedoms tour to multiple states, including a stop in Minnesota, thought to be the first by a sitting U.S. president or vice president and an abortion clinic. Policy experts suggest that although Harris's current policies on abortion and reproduction may not differ significantly from Biden's, as a result of her national tour and her own focus on maternal health, she may be a much stronger messenger. 7, the environmental protection and climate action. Harris has been a champion on climate and environmental justice for decades. As a California Attorney General, Harris sued big oil companies like BP and ConocoPhillips and investigated ExxonMobil for its role in climate change disinformation. While in the Senate, she sponsored the Green New Deal resolution. Biden has been the most pro-climate president in history, and climate advocates find Harris to be an exciting candidate in her own right. Democrats and climate activists are planning to campaign on the stark contrast between Harris and Trump, who vowed to push Americans decisively back to fossil fuels, promising to unwind Biden's climate and clean energy legacy and pull America out of its global climate commitments. If elected, one of the biggest climate goals Harris would have to craft early in her administration is how much the U.S. would reduce its climate pollution by 2035, a requirement of the Paris Climate Agreement. 8, immigration policy and border security. Her campaign released, you may have seen it, a video in late July citing Harris's support for increasing the number of Border Patrol agents and Trump's successful push to scuttle a bipartisan immigration deal that included some of the toughest border security measures in recent memory. In June of this year, the White House announced a crackdown on asylum claims meant to continue reducing crossings at the U.S.-Mexican border, and a policy that Harris's campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, indicated in late July to CBS News would continue under Harris administration. Trump's attacks stem from Biden having tasked Harris with overseeing diplomatic efforts in Central America in March of 2021. While Harris focused on long-term fixes, the Department of Homeland Security remained responsible for overseeing the border, not Harris. She put her own stamp on the administration's efforts that were made and engaged the private sector instead. Harris pulled together the Partnership for Central America, which has acted as a liaison between companies and U.S. government. Her team and partners are closely coordinating on initiatives that have led to job creation in the region. Harris has also engaged directly with foreign leaders in the region. Experts credit Harris's ability to secure private sector investments as her most visible action in the region today, but some have cautioned, see how long those investments occur, but at least they are existing. And that's what she was spending her time on, was creating these agreements. Number 9, support for Israel and humanitarian concerns, Hamas. After meeting with Israeli Prime Minister in late July, Harris gave a forceful and notable speech about the situation in Gaza. She echoed Biden's repeated comments about the ironclad support and unwavering commitment to Israel, as well as the need to get the Israeli hostages back from the Hamas captivity. The country has a right to defend itself, she said, while noting how it does so matters. However, the empathy she expressed regarding the Palestinian plight and suffering was far more forceful than what Biden has said on the matter in recent months. Harris mentioned twice the serious concern she expressed to the Prime Minister about the civilian deaths in Gaza, the humanitarian situation and destruction she called catastrophic and devastating. She went on to describe the images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time, and said, "I will not be silenced. President Biden and I are working to end this." Here's some more promises that come from the Washington Post, and they're by Aaron Blake, and it's in the Moment, which you'll have information on because you get all my references. Harris offers the simplest of pitches. She's offering normalcy and competence. Harris emphasizes a simple promise of normal competence. Our nation with this election has a precious fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battle of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Harris said, "You can also trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to the free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power," she said. She promises to be a president who leads and listens, who is realistic, practical, and has common sense, and always fights for American people. Number 2, in the additions I'm giving you, Democrats go for a contrast, darkness and delight. There were heavy moments and hours at the Democratic convention because there were multiple speakers about the problems we have in America. The gun violence, and we saw the former Congresswoman Gabrielle Riffords from Democrat from Arizona. We had Abby Clements, a former teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary, with the massacre of the school children in 2012. We had the Central Park Five who'd been exonerated, and called the Exonerated Five Day, when Trump spotlighted them through asking for the death penalty. There was Anya Cook, who nearly died after being denied care after Florida instituted an abortion ban. And there was a family of Brian D. Signick, a police officer who died after the attack on January 6th. These heavy moments also convey ways that American citizens will benefit from voting for Harris. She is committed to finding solutions. Another one that I want to mention, this is the third one, a more muscular um, message on police, veterans, and foreign policy. Harris herself ultimately called making sure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. She also made a strong statement about combating Iran, saying she would never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran backed terrorists. There's an overwhelming number of police and veterans at the Democratic convention and a great appreciation for their contributions. This is certainly different with Trump, who has expressed his disdain many times about military service personnel. If you haven't been keeping up with it, Trump's Arlington debacle is another time in which I just shake my head. It's amazing to me that a past president has no appreciation for Arlington Cemetery and doesn't seem to have any clue that it is not a place to try to gain politically through having something occur there. Now, I'm going to go to Trump for a while because he breaks so many promises. Let's start with abortion because I want to talk about something that's happening in Arkansas, and I will provide more information on it because it is very disturbing. But the primary reason that Christian nationalists and extreme religious groups support Trump is because he's going to put a national ban. In every red state that has banned abortion or has extreme laws, women's lives are in jeopardy. Trump has always been so proud of overturning Roe versus Wade. Here's one of the most recent instances of tragedy happening and has been written up in the Washington Post, entitled, Arkansas calls itself the most pro-life state in the country, but mothers there keep dying. The challenges to maternal and infant health in Arkansas, a state that strictly bans abortion, are particularly daunting in its southeast corner. In the southeast corner of Arkansas, women are in serious risk. And I will go into more about this since there's some new articles coming out about men that are now really being very vocal because their wives have been threatened. Their lives have been threatened. And so there's some major changes in that area. So I'll put more in the next podcast. Now I read Trump's promises, which basically tells that he hates anything that the Democrats and Biden have done. His economic statements make no sense, and economists say his tariff statements are poppycock. He is certainly losing with women. So here's what he has done recently. I'm going to Peter Warner's article on Trump's evangelical support just lost their best excuse. He's with the Atlantic. The most common argument made by former President Trump's evangelical supporters in defense of their supporters that although Trump may not be a moral exemplar, what matters in electing president is his policies. And for them, abortion is the most important thing to eliminate it. The rationale was always weaker than Trump supporters were willing to admit, because Trump's moral depravity was always far worse and more dangerous than they were willing to acknowledge. But the pro-life justification for supporting Trump has collapsed. Trump, who described himself as a strong pro-choice in the 1990s, including support for so-called partial birth abortion, has returned to his social liberal ways. He said on Truth Social, this is what he said most recently. My administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights, he recently declared on Truth Social. Having stripped the pro-life plank from the GOP platform, having said that the governor, Ron DeSantis, bans on abortion after 6 weeks is too short and a terrible mistake, and having promised to veto a national abortion ban. Trump has now gone one step further, essentially advocating for greater access to abortion. He recently declared on Truth Social. Warner went on to say Kamala Harris could have stated it even more emphatically. It's another one of his outrageous lies. Warner says the following: this is not a surprise. Betrayal is a core character trait of Trump's. He betrays his wives, his mistresses, his friends, his business associates, people who've worked with him, and his country. There is no person and no cause he will not double cross. The pro-life movement is only the latest to which he has been unfaithful, and it won't be the very last. So please remember, there is no person, no cause that Trump will not double cross. I want to close in this way for this podcast. The Washington Post has an article by Marianne Alfaro and Neha Misi, which was dated on August 27th. And the reason I'm telling you is entitled More Than 200 Former Bush, McCain, and Romney staffers endorse Harris. More than 200. So this is what it says. More than 200 Republicans who worked for President George W. Bush, Senator Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, or the late Senator John McCain, Republican from Arizona, have endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, warning that a second Trump presidency will hurt real everyday people and weaken our sacred institutions. The open letter with endorsements was first published Monday in USA Today with 238 signatures. The group of the former Bush, McCain, and Romney staffers issued a similar letter supporting Joe Biden when he ran against Trump in 2020. In their new pro-Harris letter, alumni from all these three top Republicans were joined by at least 5 former staffers to the late President George H.W. Bush. In the letter, the GOP alumni wrote that they are voting for Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, despite policy differences. Of course, we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, they wrote. That's to be expected. The alternative, though, is simply untenable. The letter is not only supportive of Harris, but critical of Trump. In it, the Republican alumni say Trump's presence is a threat to the United States and countries around the world, saying that he and his acolyte, running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, Republican of Ohio, kowtow to dictators like Russian President Vladimir Putin while turning their backs on their allies. And they say we can't let that happen. The group also wrote that moderate Republicans and conservative Democrats in key swing states were key in securing Biden's 2020 victory, as they put country far before party, and that they must once again take a brave stand in this election and support Harris over Trump. In response to the letter, Trump campaign spokesman Stephen said in an email that the group, quote, would rather see the country burn down than to see President Trump successfully return to the White House. Certainly not what's going to happen if Harris is elected. The letter highlights the continued division among Republicans over the party's embrace of Trump. And at the Democratic convention, I think you will remember, several Republicans came out in support of Harris, since they are not supporter of Trump. So let me finish this way. The endorsements of Kamala Harris by over 200 former Bush, McCain, and Romney staffers highlight a critical crossroads for the United States. These Republicans, despite ideological differences, recognize that the integrity and future of the nation outweigh party loyalty. They stand united against a second Trump presidency, which they believe poses a dangerous threat to American democracy, weakens our global alliances, and supports autocratic figures. This united stance reflects a broader hope among Americans who prioritize leadership that values decency, truth, and the rule of law. Their courageous decision to support Harris is a beacon of hope that transcends political divisiveness and advocacy for a future built on competence, compassion, and commitment to all Americans. As we move forward, it is imperative for voters to recognize the importance of electing leaders with the country first, uphold democratic values, and strive for unity. I really believe in what I'm saying, and that is the reason I didn't want to miss a week. So I hope you will have patience with me. You will look at all my references, and you may want to read the blog, since it will give you some more information. Thank you so much for listening. There you have it. Another episode of Hot Topic Bold Talk is in the books. We journey through today's discussion, uncovering diverse perspectives and shedding light on a very critical matter. A massive thanks to all of you that are my listeners. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're a part of this adventure. Feel free to drop your views in the polls and the Q&A section. It's really important for me to hear from you and know how you feel or what you think about my podcast. Gear up for more intriguing discussions in our next episode. Until then, stay connected, stay engaged, and let's keep those conversations buzzing. Thank you.